Alright, we're on page 94 for section 2.4. And this is operations with integers. So I don't need to ask you what integers are anymore, so you should definitely know it's the whole thing we're talking about. Operation is not talking about the game where you hit the wrong thing and it goes no, not that operation. We're talking about what? What? PEMDAS. P E M D A S. P stands for? You should be writing these down. E.
Excuse.
M.
Multiplication.
A.
Adding. Addition. Subtraction.
The one thing on here though is that what is why did I highlight M and D and A and S? Yeah?
Because those are from left to right.
Yeah, those are only from left to right. So you gotta make sure you're doing those that way. So parentheses, let's say we have 3 plus 4, that's an example of that. Exponents, we could have 2 to the third power. Multiplication, 6 times y. Division, 34 divided by 2. Addition, 2 plus 1, and subtraction, -3 minus 4. Those are all different examples of all the different ones. So we gotta remember all these steps. So make sure you have them written down. You can go back and reference them. There's 2 different methods we're going over, and that's why it's gotta take a little bit more time, because the 2 different methods require you to do it in 2 different ways. One of them involves distributive property, which you guys remember distributive property from last year?
Kind of.
That's a bummer. I love the distributive property, but we'll get there. So the problem is -13 plus a -4 times the quantity 2 minus 10. Anytime I say the quantity, that just means everything that I'm going to say afterwards is in parentheses. Times the quantity 2 minus 10 plus 8. Alright, what in there comes first from PEMDAS?
Please.
What?
Please.
Okay, yes, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, but what does P stand for?
Parentheses.
Parentheses. So, -4, what do I do with it? What?
Nothing.
What do you mean? You just said that parentheses was first.
Yes, but you want to do 2 minus 10 first.
Why? -4 is in parentheses.
Yes, but
Yes.
What do I do with parentheses? Let's say I go ahead and do 2 minus 10 first. What do I do with the -4?
Nothing.
Why?
Because it doesn't have a thing.
It doesn't have anything inside it. What's the purpose of parentheses around the -4?
It's just to keep from the plus and the minus to be close.
Yeah, it's just that you don't have the plus and the minus right next to each other, because it's considered improper to have a plus and a minus sign right next to each other. So it's just saying that this is a -4. It's not, otherwise it would be plus minus 4 instead of plus and -4, which I know sounds like it's the same thing, but it's not. One of them you have 2 signs together, which you can't have. The other one you're adding, but it's just a negative number. So yeah, 2 minus 10 first, which is no. If we are going to be making mistakes on what 2 minus 10 is, this is going to be a really long section.
-8.
And I'm going to be writing out your guys' best friend and say, hey, we start here,
No.
and we start at 1, 2, we have to go
It's
back
-8. It's -8. It's
10,
It's -8.
which means
-8.
we have to separate this out into 2, and how much do we have left? to go back. Oh, we have 8 to go back further. Where do we end up at?
9.
Negative 8.
Yeah.
Carlos is dead at
Okay.
this point.
I'm just letting you know right now, if this section does not go well, and if you are just gonna go through these and not really think about them, not think about things in terms of number line, you're gonna be doing this over again. So either you can be extra careful, or you can go back and suffer the wrath of me talking about number lines over and over and over again, because I am more than willing to do this number line and pull it up as many times as I need to for you guys to make sure you understand it. If you can get this to work and understand what it does in terms of number line without me doing that, then I don't need the number line.
Good.
But if we're going to say that 2 minus 10 is 8, when that's really 10 minus 2, then that's not going to work for me. Okay, as much as this pains me, I'm going to erase this right now.
Oh, thank goodness.
So yeah, it is negative 8. So I'm going to put it at, because it's a negative number, I'm going to leave it that way, and then I rewrite everything else. And I want you to practice doing it this way, where you're rewriting everything. Underline one thing, evaluate what that one thing you underlined is, and then keep on going. Every time, underline the next thing you do, evaluate it, refill everything back in from the beginning. That is going to present, and I'm willing to give you guys the, hey, you don't have to do all the number lines right away if you can do it right away. I am not going to be willing for you to be like, okay, well that's negative 8. Negative 8 times negative 4 is positive 32. And negative 13 plus positive 32 is positive 19. And 19 plus 8 is 27.
Is that the answer?
No.
Yep.
You can't.
So why can't we do it? Do we have to pay
How long
for
have I been
answers?
doing math? How long have you been doing math?
Good point. I am Jesus.
No, you're not.
No, you're not. You're definitely not.
That's like
So,
saying I'm
that
Donald
being said,
Trump.
what's the next thing?
You look like him.
Stop. What's the next thing?
Exponents.
Oh,
Is there any exponents to do?
no.
Yes?
No.
You do adding first.
No.
I know
Multiplication
what.
and
We'll go back to this for your sake.
No. I was gonna say.
Parentheses, exponents, there's none of those left. Multiplication and division, left to right. So, what is left? Multiplication and division, left to right.
There's no.
Nothing.
There's none? I
Well,
see I see
the
a multiplication
was
sign in there.
Oh, so tiny, yeah, just a little period.
Remember, even if the multiplication sign isn't there, if you see no multiplication sign, you assume it is multiplication. So even if I took this multiplication sign out, you would still assume that. But yes, negative 4 times negative 8 is 32 plus 8. Negative 13 plus. Alright, next.
You do you do 32 plus 8, and then you do 40, and then.
Ooh, addition and subtraction, which order?
From left to right.
From left to right. So negative 13 plus 32 is, think, negative 13, you go forward 13. This is one time where things like this, yes, I did that in my head earlier when I gave it to you and I got the right answer with it. This is not one of the easier ones to say, hey, I'm gonna get the right answer with it. Yes?
21.
21.
So think, negative 13, 0, this is 13.
I shouldn't.
And how much does this add up to so that this whole thing is 32? 13 plus 21
Yes.
is
No.
34.
No.
20.
I messed up.
So, okay, and yes, I get like, hey, you're disappointed with yourself, whatever about it, but this is why you don't guess and check, especially with stuff like this. Things like 2 minus 10, that I kind of expect you to be able to get by this point. Negative 13 plus 32, I do not expect you to be able to get at this point. If you can rationalize in your head, I mean, you can write off to the side, hey, what's 32 minus 13? And then you can get, oh, okay, this is 12, okay, this is 2, 9, okay, so it's 19, because you should be able to rationalize, and make this a little bit more nice, that if this is negative 13, and this whole distance is 32, then you subtract, you can subtract what this is distance right here, and that's 13, and know that, hey, whatever that subtraction is, that's what you're gonna get right here, which ends up being 19. You should be able to get to that much, yes?
Oh, you could do it.
So then you can say, hey, this is 19, 19 plus 8,
21.
and you end up getting your answer, which is
27.
27.
27.
Yep. add that.
One other hack I will give you on just on this one right here, just because I'm being nice. If I do this, what can I do so that I don't have to deal with this? If I put parentheses around that negative
You
13.
can add.
And by the way, what's the only reason there was no parentheses around the negative 13?
It's because the negative sign is in the front and there's nothing.
Yep, it's at the beginning. If there would have been something else before it, you would have had to add parentheses around it, but because it's the beginning, you don't have to. Did you have a question or comment?
You add.
So if I put this in parentheses right here, what can I do so that I don't have to deal with this, all this big junk over here?
You add.
Think about it. There are 3 numbers and all of them are being added. What can you do with numbers when you are adding them? What property can you use that helps you move things around?
Multiplying.
Simplifying
Starts with a C.
calculations.
It is the commutative property. So if I have negative 13 plus 32 plus 8, I can do them in any order that I want, or I can move them around in any order. Now, because all of them are being added together, I actually could say I'm going to break the rule of going left to right, because I'm doing all of them with addition. 32 plus 8 is 40, and I can even switch the order of this one and that one right there, because I'm protecting this with a parentheses. Parentheses basically says, hey, I'm not changing the value of anything around it because it's a negative. That's why I always, every year I talk to classes, your parentheses are like what?
Life.
8th graders, any of you guys remember? Parentheses are like what? When you put them around things, they act as a,
The brain.
starts with a B.
What do you got in?
Bubble. None of you remember?
Boundary.
Bubble wrap.
Bounce.
They're like bubble, parentheses are like bubble wrap around things. When you stick them around them, it basically protects you a little bit extra degree, so you're not going to potentially make that mistake. So this negative 13 then goes right here. So we have 4 plus a negative 13. Guess what? You have addition, subtraction right next to each other then. Addition, subtraction right next to each other becomes a
Subtract negative.
negative. So 40 minus 13, which is,
47.
you got the same answer.
How do you read?
Now, if you're like, hey, I don't really want to have to deal with the commutative property, and I want to stick with this, you can stick with this. If you stick with this, when you get things like negative 13 plus 32, you're going to have to use the number line in some way, shape, or form. You guys are not at the point where you're like, hey, I just can't use it. And you're going to know by this point, you're going to have to redo it if you don't get it right. But this is the other thing, realizing, hey, these are all addition. If they're all addition, if they're all subtraction, you gotta throw that out the window and you can't do it anymore then. Or you can turn, actually I'm not, that's too many things to throw at you, I'm not gonna throw that thing at you yet. But that's how that works. So that's one way of doing it, just doing it straight like that. The other way of doing it, okay, clone, oh.
Magic man.
I wanna move this.
You multiply it
Wow.
by the steps.
I don't like that.
What is it called?
What does God look like a bald
All right.
man?
I got it.
Oh, yes, here now. When does God have
So the second way of doing it is you use the distributive property. Everyone say distributive property.
Distributive property. Distributive property. I distributed your property.
Okay, so distributive property, this is, I'll give you an easy example and then I'll show you how to do it with these. First of all. So if you had 3 times 4 plus 2. There's 2 ways to figure this out. One is you can just add 4 plus 2 and then multiply it times 4. That would have been what you guys did. 2 minus 10, then multiply times negative 4. The second way is to distribute these, and then I like to put little X's here, because every time you see those little rainbows, the rainbows represent multiplication symbols. And then this turns into 3 times 4 plus 3 times 3 times 4 plus 3 times 2. This becomes 12, this becomes 12, and then it's going to become 24. Wait, did I do something wrong there?
Yes.
Oh yeah, this becomes 6.
How can it be?
I was like, I think that's the answer. and this becomes 18. But the same thing would happen if you did 4 plus 2, you would get 6, and 3 times 6 is 18. Now, you may think, hey, doesn't that seem more complicated, right? It does seem more complicated, but right here, you have, these are both numbers. There are gonna be times in the future where instead of having the number 2 here, you're gonna have, anyone wanna guess? What?
Exponents.
Not an exponent necessarily.
20.
I mean, it could be an exponent, what?
20,
Nope. What can you not add together with another number?
7.
You can add 7 and 4.
Oh, 1 4.
You can add 7 plus 1/4. I mean, it would be a bear to, it would be a
Zero.
nice one to multiply.
0.
No.
What?
You can do 0 plus 4.
Minus 0.
What is an unknown quantity in math?
Pi. What?
You know what pi is?
Minus
3.14159 blah 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 blah.
One of those annoying repeating numbers that you
What's
give.
an unknown number? If I say, hey, we don't know what this is, what do we give it? So to the
X.
v,
Variable.
variable, yeah. So if this was 3 times 4 plus y, you would have no choice but to use the distributive property because you can't add 4 and y together. So if you want to simplify it and be able to work with it, then you're gonna have to distribute it. You can't just add things together the way they are to start with. So, if you were going to
Use math.
use a distributive property here, well, a couple of things. Anytime I see a subtraction here, I don't wanna deal with subtraction, so I would turn it into addition of the opposite. You guys remember me saying that before? Okay, well, you're gonna get used to it. So instead of saying 2 minus 10, you say 2 plus a negative 10, and you rewrite anything that has subtractions around. Again, that's like kind of like the bubble wrap to protect your negatives like we talked about. You would do the same thing with this parentheses. That's what we talked about before. Anytime you see those parentheses, if you do not have a book out and you are not taking notes, you are showing me that you're disrespecting me. You know you should be taking notes. You know if I'm writing, you're supposed to be writing. So then I have a negative 4 here. I look at, hey, what am I doing next? All right, well, that's when I was using the distributive property. Negative 4 times 2 plus negative 4 times what? Negative 4 times 2 plus negative 4 times, no, negative 10. And again, I rewrite all these different things over here. Now, does it look like I'm writing a lot of different lines of work here? Yes, it should. You're gonna rewrite the same thing over and over and over and over again with different things. Then I evaluate, if you want, you can evaluate both of these things at the same time. They're both multiplication. And if you're like, hey, it's too much work, I don't wanna mess anything up, then just do one thing at a time. You don't have to do both at the same time. Negative 4 times 2, what? Yeah, negative 8, but what do I have to remember to do with that? Yep, put parentheses around it, plus negative 4 times negative 10. Oh, I actually don't have to put parentheses around that. 40 plus 8 plus negative 13. Now, if I'm doing this, I want to add the negatives together. I want to add the positives together. These are going to be 48. Remember, these are all addition. You have addition, addition, addition. If any of them are negatives, what do you want to do so that you don't make a mistake with them? Turn the negative into... How do you turn negative into positive? You put addition of the opposite. So if it would have said 3 minus 7, you would go 3 plus a negative 7 and turn it into something like that. Anytime you see that. There are a lot of different steps on here with these things. So if you're not taking notes on these things with the different with everything, you can see how today's assignment could trip you up a lot of different ways. Negative 13 plus negative 8, so I like to do the negatives together. Negative 13 plus a negative, remember, plus a negative means you're going, what, forward or backward? Backward. So negative 13, you go back 8 more, means you end up at, not 20, that would be minus 7.
21.
Negative 21.
No, don't, it's not.
And then think, 48 plus a negative 21. Remember, you can switch the order of these because they're addition. That commutative property is really important here. So you can say, hey, I'm gonna switch these. And then think, instead of negative 21, instead of negative 21 plus 48, it's 48 plus a negative 21. That just becomes a negative. 48 minus 21, 27. You get the same thing that you had earlier.
More work.
Yes, it is more work. So if there are no variables in it, which one of these are you going to choose to use? Distributive property or no distributive property? No distributive property in this case, but you do need to know how to use it, and you are going to be using distributive property when it comes to the future. Even without using the distributive property, it's really important to note that anytime you see negatives, try to put them in parentheses, use that bubble wrap, or turn any subtractions into addition of the opposite. That oftentimes, over and over and over again, is going to help you to be able to simplify problems without making those easy mistakes. All right, now we can go on to the second problem. We'll go over here. Let's go negative 9 minus 32 divided by 4. Minus 21. All right. What's the first thing we want to do? Yeah?
32 divided by 4.
Before that, what's the big thing I said that, hey, you want to protect yourself with these if you see a bunch of them?
You wanna put parentheses in the negative 32.
Yeah,
and
so
the
boom, I see that.
21.
Can I just put parentheses around this?
No,
Yes,
I
and
can't see.
21.
Yes or no?
No, because
Why not?
it's not a negative number.
Yes, it's not a negative number. It is a what? You're doing what here?
It's you're
But,
subtracting.
That's right, you're subtracting a positive number. So what do you have to do with this?
You have to divide it by 4.
Nope,
You have
you don't do